Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the first installment of the LATINX presentation series. My name is Virginia. I'm the Curatorial and Educational Intern here at the Piano Craft Gallery. And I'm super excited to begin this series with an interview with Julia. So thank you all for coming out to support this. I'm just really excited to hear about your curatorial and educational practice. I really admire your work. So thank you so much for joining us in the gallery today.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and thank you to everyone for putting this lovely thing together. So I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. Yeah. So for those of you who may not know Julia, she's involved with a number of organizations and projects around Boston. She's the organizer of the Boston Art Book Fair, which just happened last weekend. She works in exhibitions at the Boston Center for the Arts and also co-directs Byte Footage, which is a curatorial project out of Buenos Aires, which we'll hear more about later. So let's jump into it. I'm super excited to hear about your work.
Yeah, thank you.
So firstly, would you mind telling us what this wonderful image is behind us on the screen?
This is a weird image. So you sent me some questions in advance, and I think the first question was about what curation means for me.
Yes.
So Byte Footage, which is this project, an art festival that I run in Buenos Aires. I co-run it with Julieta Gomez-Blumen, who's also a curator and educator based in Buenos Aires, but she's also from Colombian origin, so she's Argentinian Colombian. And the festival started in 2017, and we started thinking about artists that use internet archiving as a medium, so people that do digital art with materials that are like floating in the internet, and how people reappropriate those different materials, that can be sounds, images, or different things, and make their art with that, and also the translation that happens there, because mainly those materials come from the internet, which is mainly based in northern countries. So how also that rereads into Latin American art. And just for Instagram and for fun, we started asking different artists if they could share with us 5 images that they've saved in their computers, things that they just saw online and were like, oh, I'm gonna save this because it means something to me. And this is one of the images that I don't know where it came from. But well, I mean, that's also very interesting about reappropriating the Internet Archive. Like, it's so difficult to track it back to what that is. And this image was selected by Tomo Cabrera, who's an artist that works with us and who also has helped us organize Byte Footage in the future. And I think the image represents connections and networks and just people doing together. And I think your email question that you haven't posed yet about what means curating, I think that this image might encapsulate a little bit of what I think, just people building networks together and doing things together, and also beauty.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love like the visual representation of connection. And a lot of my work in my art practice and in my like education practice. Are you sliding down?
Yeah, I'm sliding down.
But yeah, a lot of what I do in my practice is just kind of based on the fact that like I think everything is connected, and you can draw like a connection between anything, like despite how different they may be. So I just love that you started us off with this image. But my question that you were starting to answer, thank you. I had asked you, what exactly does curation mean for you? Because at least what I've seen, like in my work, is that curators and educators and anyone involved with creating spaces of like arts experiences, they have like a really different definition of what it means for them. So what does it mean for you?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I also come to curation not in the traditional way, like I didn't study curation as my master's master's or PhD, I mostly have done always like arts organizing. So I come to curation, but from doing mostly. And I also tend to delegate a lot the curation. It's like I pick the theme and I pick someone who's gonna curate it, and I pick one artist and then I give it to someone and I say, do your thing. So it's not always 100% me. In fact, Byte Footage I co-directed, so I'm always like very collaborative, and I just try to identify different elements and then give it to someone else. Maybe I not always have the strength to just have this is my curatorial vision and stuff like that. And I also curate a lot of things that are not exhibitions, but public programs, public programs, exhibitions, talks, performances. So it has taken all sorts of different shapes. Education programs. So I feel like everything I kind of see as curating, because it's usually like a question I have or an interest I have or something I'm seeing that I can't like pinpoint what it is, and then through curating people and gathering people in the same space and bringing their art and their ideas and putting different people in conversation, it's kind of like, oh, go answer the question for me, right? Like that's kind of how I feel. But
great, yeah. So I'm also interested in hearing about like kind of your journey through like the Boston art scene and how you kind of established yourself as an independent curator and administrator here, and kind of, you know, the way that you've come into these big projects that you organize now. But more specifically, like how you kind of discovered, you talked about this a little bit, but how you discovered that you had like an interest and talent for curation. Because you said you weren't like formally trained, you just kind of like worked your way into it. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's cool. I also forgot that I had like some things of the people I work with, which I think is very important. So that's Julieta Gomez-Blumen, who co-curates with me Byte Footage, and we just co-curated a show at the Mills Gallery at Boston Center for the Arts where I work. It's a show by Crystal Alcea. I'll talk more about that later. And then these are Camila Albertocci and Hernan Caseu, who work with me in Buenos Aires, and that was a festival that we put together, and I wasn't there, I was here, so they kind of did the work in person for me. So and those are Randy Hopkins and Casey Fisher, who work with me currently at Boston Center for the Arts. That's Crystal Alcea, who we curated the exhibition for. So also artists, Cedric Harper and Carl Moses were artists here that have a studio at SOA. So it's just a bunch of people together. Here we're watching an Argentine soccer game during the workout while we install at the gallery. So I think I wanted to add that to the curation aspect, how like everyone's view come together, and I try more to be an editor of all of that, but definitely like hearing and being open to everyone's ideas. I think that's the funnest thing. So you were saying that, I kind of forgot what you asked, but I didn't want to forget to mention all the lovely peeps that make my job possible.
Right, yeah, I mean, everything is a team effort.
Yeah. So you were saying about how did I get involved in Boston?
Yeah, kind of your journey through like the Boston art scene and becoming a curator here and like the different projects you've been involved in.
Yeah. I mean, it was mostly just getting a job, really. Like not, I moved here 3 years ago, and I started working at the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture there, where they hired me to start and coordinate a youth program for Latinx youth. A lot of my background has been in teen education, especially in Argentina. I worked in a teen arts program there in a polycultural center that's very well known and huge and really fun. It serves a lot of teens every weekend. So then they hired me for that, which was great. We we serve specifically kids from Chelsea and Somerville, which is not a very it's not like kids from Somerville and Chelsea are not very often in the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture. So that was really interesting and a lot of effort and forcing, like there's not even a bus that goes from Cambridge to Chelsea, you know, so it was really challenging and interesting, and using Harvard resources for something like that was very meaningful, at least for me. And then I started working at Boston Center for the Arts, where I'm the Associate Director of Exhibitions, which means that I run the exhibition program. We have a gallery, the Mills Gallery, you might have been there, and we do open calls and we show shows. So I kind of pick the shows, but the shows come with their curator and their artist. Right now I'm co-curating a show at the gallery, but that's not what usually happens. I don't curate there, I curate the curators, which is the best way of curating, as I was saying, just like hands off, but also hands on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about the show that you did co-curate at the Mills Gallery with Cristobal.
So I wrote some photos. Cristobal is a Chilean artist who's now Boston-based. He was hired by Tufts, and I actually met him in Buenos Aires when running Byte Footage. We also did an open call for an exhibition there, and he applied from Chile. And we had, so the exhibition, we were gonna curate, but we set up an external jury that was gonna pick the artist because like 900 people applied. So we were like, okay, this needs to be like a team effort and also bring in more points of view. So they didn't pick him. And me and Julieta were looking at all the submissions, and we were like, his art is so amazing. He's trained as a painter, but now he's doing animation. He also does sculpture and 3D printing. So he works in different mediums that are very interesting to kind of see together. And also he works a lot with archives, and especially this show, which is right now at the Mills Gallery, is a project that he's been working on for a long time. And it's about when the Spanish came to Latin America in the colonization moment, so 1492, and how they started describing all the animals and native people and plants that they saw, and they didn't know what they were. So they basically started describing them and trying to understand what they were seeing. And of course there was a lot of bias and disinformation, and also, I mean, they were there to conquer in the end, right? They weren't like trying to be friendly. So a lot of the narratives that started growing in that time were around monsters, because all these unknown things were like violent and unknown, and also they kind of wanted to have those lands for themselves. So that narrative kind of became part of, well, the conquer and the genocide that came after. So there's a lot of written archives from that time, but also images, and he takes all of that universe and kind of brings it to the present, animates a lot of those monsters, to kind of, in an act of also reappropriating and reclaiming those notions, and how we're still, as Latin Americans living in the US, a little bit monster-like. So there's also like, he also brings those concepts into the present moment and reflects about his own identity currently in the US.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so it's very complex, very difficult to explain, and here maybe like more answers about the curatorial part, but I think we as Latin Americans are so used to learning about the colonization of the Americas. It's like, I don't know, elementary school, like you study that every 6 years of elementary school. And here when we started like saying, oh yeah, because the journals of Cristobal Colón, people were like, or Christophorus Columbus, people were like, oh, wow, you can read that? And I was like, yeah, he was like writing a journal and you can find that in your local bookstore. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things we don't know. I mean, I'm not judging or anything, I'm just saying like it's interesting to see how some parts of history are so important in education in Latin America and here they're not, and I guess vice versa, but I just wouldn't know. So definitely there was a lot of context to be given for this show. We did like a gallery guide that it's actually coming up. So these are more images of the show. So as you see, there's screens where the monsters are kind of interacting and talking, and they're also inhabiting the gallery. So the monsters are inside the gallery, so it's like you're seeing the gallery, but you're also seeing the screens that reproduce the gallery. So it's like the gallery also becomes like monstrous-like because it never ends. It's kind of reproduces in itself. And here you can see the paintings and the TVs. I should also say that this show we won an NEA grant for this show. We applied, and that was what made us able to buy all this amazing technology that the gallery didn't have. So also, since I run the gallery, this is so exciting for me because we're gonna keep the technology and other artists are gonna be able to show in different mediums, which is something that we're seeing more and more, right? Like artists working across mediums, so that was also really cool. And this is the gallery guide that we did. The show is completely bilingual. It has world text in both languages and also the world text, the gallery guide. This was designed by Andres Wick, who's also a friend of ours in Argentina, so also everything very collaborative. And here there's a lot of history, a little bit about the colonization, but also about each monster that is represented in the show. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking us through your work on that exhibition. It's phenomenal. And just really, really lovely to hear about your involvement in the show and how you've, even though Cristobal was not involved in that first round, you were still able to include him and bring his work into the gallery. It's amazing.
Sure.
So yeah, and talking about some of your current curatorial projects, last weekend was the Boston Art Book Fair.
Yes.
So congratulations on such a successful event. I've heard great things about it. It looked like a beautiful exhibition of art books and beautiful meeting of people and all who are interested. So I would love to hear a little bit about that and what it's like to be the lead organizer of an event of that size, because this is a huge event. So I'd love to hear about the process of that.
Sure. I should add that Cristobal and I are doing a walkthrough of the gallery next Saturday at 3. The show is coming to an end on December 9th, so that's, not next week. Next week is Thanksgiving, so the week after. So 1 week before the show closes, we're gonna do that because, as I said, there's a lot to unpack. So if you're around, you're all invited. So the book fair, the book fair actually, it's, so my boss is Randy Hopkins, Director of Visual Arts at Boston Center for the Arts, and she, together with Oliver Mack, who's the director of Bodega, the streetwear brand, they funded the Boston Art Book Fair 7 years ago when I wasn't even in the US. And they've been directing it since then. So I'm just like the producer of the event, which is still very intense, but it's definitely their baby. This is a photo from last week. We have more than 140 exhibitors in the Boston Center for the Arts Cyclorama, which is, I don't know if you've been there, but huge historic building that can fit all the people. And people are vending scenes, prints, illustrations, and everything, books, art books, and everything you can think of. It's really cool. People come from all over the country and abroad too, and also a lot of local artists. So we're very proud of this event. yeah, it's really cool. And I run the public programs during so it's a whole weekend, and during Saturday and Sunday there are public programs that are free for the public. This is an image of a paper making workshop that we did. It's really fun, but also we have panels. This year we organized a panel with Praise Shadows Gallery for their current show by Crystal Couture. Panels with the city of Boston, panels by local photographer, Malachi Pearson, I don't know, just a bunch of things. It's really fun. They get a lot of people come. So yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like just like so exciting to be like a curator in all these different contexts, because it's not just like working in an exhibition and creating that type of experience, but also like extending into like creating these larger events and creating these public education programs, which is really, really amazing. And I really enjoy hearing about. I'd also love to hear a bit more about Byte Footage, which you've talked about a little bit already. But just the idea of these exhibitions and these festivals that are based on artists working with like internet archiving is so interesting to me, and it's something I've done on like small scales in my art practice, but I've never, even been able to think about what it would look like kind of extending into a larger experience. So I'm so interested to hear like how that came together and how, the idea for creating this collective in a way came together with you and your other co-director and the projects that you guys have worked on since.
Yeah, so usually we started as a festival at Centro Cultural Kirchner in Argentina. The thing that kind of the core of it is an exhibition, and we do an open call for that exhibition. And then around that we curate programs and workshops and DJ sets, so there's parties. It's pretty fun, it's huge and very ambitious. And the open call is always for artists who do some type of digital archiving, as you were saying. We've established different themes that are basically, so the first festival was about memory, which is a big concept in Argentina with all its history and desaparecidos and like all the dictatorship back in Argentina. And then we just jumped from one theme to another. We've done a couple of those, and basically we set a theme, and we kind of write a curatorial text, and then we do the open call, and then a lot of people apply to those, so they're fun. We ended up doing 3 or 4 shows that were like for 35, 40 artists each, and then just depending on the themes that we were thinking about, but that also appear in the different artworks, we might invite different people to talk or different workshops. The cool thing is, it's an independent arts festival, so we kind of do what we want in a way. Like sometimes I'm like, are we too far from archiving already? And we sometimes do, but I mean, it's our thing and it's fun. We've definitely done other things, not only festivals was like the main format, but now, we've done more workshops, and now we curated the show. I think that it's unfortunately like getting smaller as we grow up. We were in school so excited about life, and I'm still very excited about life, but I also need to pay rent. So, now it's smaller and more manageable. We 100% support it with local grants. But this is a show we did, so the last time we did a big festival in the ways I just described was in 2021, and that was in Argentina, in Centro Cultural Kirchner, and this is the exhibition, which was curated by Hernan Caseo, who's in our team. He was kind of the lead curator person for the show, but we all worked together to do it, but he was kind of the main person, and he did a fantastic job. This show was only up for 4 days, so it's at pop-up show. And these are some of the photos of performances that happened during that day. That's Abstracta, which is an amazing performer that also submitted their work, and then they were selected and programmed. And that's Szejnblum, who's an amazing contemporary artist, and she's working on top of archiving of her own work in the back. So she had this piece that she interpreted with someone else, male dancer, and she's working without him on top of her own archives. So, and then we did some workshops like this. So this was kind of, I want to say at the end of the pandemic, but that's not even true. But you know, like when things were getting slightly better at the end of 2021. And this was a workshop with Projectorazo, who were these people that started doing political projections when everyone was at home. And they kind of gave a workshop about creating these simple images that have a lot of political content, and also how to project those in large scale. So that was like a 4-hour workshop, and then in the end they went to the main hall of the cultural center and projected what they created during the workshop. So yeah, that was really fun. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so looking ahead, I do have one more question for you. So currently I'm a student, and I'm still excited about life.
Me too, don't get me wrong.
But I'm a student, I study art education, but I'm also a curator. And I see the two as, you know, almost interchangeable, like just very much interlaced in everything that I do. And you spoke about how your background is in like teen arts education in Chelsea and Somerville and Harvard. And so I'm interested to know how those, you know, themes of education and I guess public programming are still showing up in your curatorial work, and how much you see yourself as educator versus curator.
Yeah. So I think that going back to the conversation about curation, I agree, there's like a lot of education. Like I was even saying, like when I started discussing like themes in Cristobal's show, and like people were like, oh, I need more references, or I'm so interested because it's interesting. You have to do a lot of work, right? A lot of that communication work of translating like his work and giving the people like the adequate framework to enjoy it more or be able to engage more if they want to. I mean, some people might not do it, and that's also celebrated. But so I definitely think that education and curation are super intertwined, and then my background is in education, which is like more formal education, like let's plan a class and let's have these teens do this thing or the other. And I also try to do a lot of that. So I was showing the programs of the book fair that I co-curated with Randy Hopkins and Casey Fisher and Michaela Cowie, who are also my colleagues. Or things like in Cristobal's show, we just had a workshop for youth. So we partnered with Social Latina, who they're right here in Roxbury Crossing, and we gave a completely bilingual workshop on, and I have some images of that, on stop motion based on some of the themes in Cristobal's show. So there was like a little bit of conceptual discussion and then some hands-on activities. This is a 2-part workshop. Actually, we were there at Roxbury 2 weeks ago, and they're coming after Thanksgiving to the gallery, and we're going to incorporate some of the animations they did into Cristobal's work. So that's going to be fun. Cristobal is also, so he's based here because he teaches animation at Tufts, at SMFA, the museum school. And so that's really fun. So I always try to do that. I feel like it's so interesting to, actually what we were doing in the workshop was that Cristobal was reading actual description from explorers to the teens, and they were modeling with clay while he read and kind of animating that at the same time. and just giving, I don't know, it's just like approaching the exhibition but from another angle, and also going back to the sources of what inspired Crystal and seeing in a way how random that whole thing was in a way. I don't know how to say it in another way, but it's like outrageous, and just talking a little bit with the youth about that and how this information operates, because it's something that is so present even nowadays, right? I mean, I think that was great and a great experience for us to engage with the show in a different way. And this is some of the images of the Harvard exhibition that we did with teens. This was in 2021 for that project, Hear Me Out, Escúchame. So I just wanted to show that.
Right. Yeah, it's so wonderful to hear how the teens are being involved in that current exhibition, first of all. I love the idea of him reading out the descriptions and seeing what they can create and see how it maybe compares to what he created for the exhibition too. That's wonderful. But I want to thank you so much for coming and giving us this insight into your work in arts across many different sectors, from exhibitions to curation to public programming to education. It's just really fantastic to hear about, and I feel very, very grateful to have had you come in and give us this presentation.
No,
so thank you.
Thank you for
Julia,
having
being
me
here.
and putting all of this together.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
And thank you to our wonderful audience for being here for the first installment of the LATINX presentation series. We have 2 more presentations tomorrow, November 19th, one at 1 p.m. and one at 3 p.m. So we hope to see you there as well. But thank you again for coming out to support Julia. Thank you guys so much.